Okay guys, so we have come to a very important part of our training, and this is where we talk about communicating effectively with customers. And it is often said that effective communication is the core, it's the bedrock of any organization. Any organization that is not customer focused and communicating effectively with customers is not the business you want to do business with. So it's a core, it's the bedrock of any successful business. So we've come up with 10 ways to communicate effectively, and we're going to dive into them one by one. And if you have any comments, if you have any concerns, any questions about any one of these, feel free to raise your hand. We'll talk about it, and we'll share our ideas, and we'll share our responses. So the first one we're going to talk about is listen actively. Listening actively is one of the most important aspects of communicating effectively with your customers. Now, when it says listen actively, what we're actually saying and what we're actually talking about is this is where body language comes in. You want to make sure that if you have your customer in front of you and your customer is explaining to you what their issue is and what their pain points are, and the way you want to make sure that you demonstrate active listening is you want to make sure you nod your head. You want to use small phrases like "I see," "I understand," "Okay," and this gives the customer the assurance that you're actually listening to what they are saying. And one important aspect of listening actively is that you want to maintain eye contact. Always maintain eye contact. If there's someone who's communicating with you and they can't make eye contact, that's not a person to trust. When you can make eye contact, that shows that you trust the person, and that then ensures your customer that they can trust you. All right, great. The next one we want to look at is don't interrupt. Boy, is this big. Do not interrupt your customers. This is another part of active listening I do believe, but I put it as a second way to communicate effectively. Do not interrupt. Sometimes your customers may be explaining to you what the issue is, and of course, being the knowledgeable person that you are, sometimes you and I've struggled with that too, being in sales positions for years, where I know the answer and I want to say what it is and come up with a solution and tell them what the solution is right then and there, but you still have to give them that chance to finish, because this ensures that at the end of what they're saying, you don't want them to feel rushed. You don't want them to feel like you want them to just get to the point, but you want to make sure that they take their time and explain to you what is going on. So don't interrupt, please. Don't interrupt. The third one is use easy to understand language. Use easy to understand words. Refrain from using industry jargon and certain things. You have to understand the way you communicate with your coworkers and your colleagues may not be the best way to communicate with your customers, because while your colleagues, you and your colleagues may understand certain lingos and certain ways that you speak and you may communicate as it pertains to your particular field, your customers may not be well versed on that. So you don't want to ever make a customer feel like you're talking gibberish, or you're talking a whole different language and it's just something that they don't understand. So use easy to use terms. That's important. That's very important. The next one is use professional wording. Now this one's funny to me, and I see some of you laughing. I know where this is going. For me, and the fact that we're in an era now, and we're in a time where technology has now it's taken over all our lives. Technology is taking over all our lives, and we all text nowadays. We all text. Everybody texts nowadays. I sometimes prefer a text message and a phone call, because some stuff I think can just be wrapped up within a text message. But in so doing, even if your clients, even if your customers prefer texting, you always want to make sure that you use professional wording. Even if you are emailing, you want to make sure that you're using certain, you're not using certain abbreviations that will come off as unprofessional. For instance, TTYL, talk to you later. Don't ever want to use that. not at all. If you do want to say talk to you later, write it out. Write the whole thing out. You don't want to come off as being unprofessional. So refrain from using abbreviations and LOL and BRB for be right back. Always want to make sure that you use professional wording. It is very, very, very important. Number 5, demonstrate courtesy. Here's where we lose customers when we're not courteous, when we don't use courtesy. We don't, and right here is where a lot of customers may tend to get upset when we don't use courtesy. For instance, if you're with a customer and you're collecting information from the customer and you want certain information from the customer, here's a way that you can communicate this effectively and demonstrate courtesy. For instance, if you're asking for the customer's social security number, you don't want to just go social. You want to say, may I have your social security number, please? So this way, it's exactly. I like the point you made. You don't want them to feel like it's like an interrogation. You just social, and no, communicate it properly. Use courtesy. May I have your social security number, please? All right. Number 6, use positive instead of negative statements. Now, one example of this, and like I've said before, I've been in sales positions for years. I've held sales positions, and one way I've learned and I've developed over the years are how to deal with when it comes to using positive and not negative statements. You don't ever want to make the customer feel like they have made a bad decision. Even if it's coming from a competitor and they're telling you what they've used or a product they've used that is your competitor, you don't want to make them feel like they have made a mistake or they have made a stupid somewhat decision. Do you understand what I'm saying? And also, if a customer asks you a question and it's a question that you may not know how to answer or you may not have the answer for, what I've learned to do over the years is actually, instead of saying I don't know and leave it up in the air, you let the customer, you know what, you say no to the customer, say, Mr. Customer, I don't have the answer to that right now, but I will go and find out for you and I will get back to you. It's just that simple. Because if you leave it in the air and say, hey, well, I don't know, then to the customer, you don't seem very knowledgeable. And now that sheds a bad light on your organization because now they're wondering what is actually going on here, because these employees don't seem to know their product. So you always want to make sure that you don't leave a bad taste in their mouths, right? Be aware. Number 7. Be aware of words or phrases that can lead to defensive reaction. Once again, it comes down to tone and it comes down to how it's being said. It can also be a part of demonstrating courtesy. For instance, I worked in a bank. In between myself and the customers would be a glass. So sometimes when customers are actually talking, I cannot hear what they're saying because I have colleagues who are working behind the desk also and they're counting money, and the money counter is going, so sometimes it'll make noise and you can't necessarily hear what's going on. So you can't hear exactly what the customer is saying, and sometimes the customers don't want to blurt out all their information. For instance, I say like I'm working in the bank. So instead of saying, hey, I can't hear what you're saying, can you talk louder? You don't ever want to do that, because that in turn, that comes off hostile. And if I'm a customer and you're talking to me that way, I'm going to get a little bit offended. So you want to make sure that you don't use phrases that are gonna in turn give a negative reaction or a defensive reaction. Instead, you ask, you simply say, well, I'm having a hard time hearing what you're saying, Mr. Customer. Is it possible you could speak a little louder? Simple. So this way, you don't get them all worked up. You don't get them all defensive, and this way it moves the conversation along. All right, that's great. Number 8, limit background noises or distractions. I've been to many places. Places of business, retail. I've been to restaurants to order food, and there are times when I walk up to the counter and I'm trying to order something, but coworkers are having they're everybody's laughing and they're communicating and they're standing in front of you. They're trying to take your order, but yet they're still talking to the coworkers. You don't ever want to do that, because that will make the customer feel as though they are not important and their time is not valued. That's not something you want to do. So limit distractions. Limit being on the cell phone. Limit being distracted by everything else that's going on in that particular area. You always want to make sure that the customer gets your undivided attention. It is important to make the customer feel like their time is valued, right? Now, number 9, don't underestimate the value of snail mail. What do I mean by snail mail? Once you have gotten the customer's business, once you have gotten that customer to, whether it's either sign up for a program or you've gotten them to purchase a particular product, you always want to make sure that at the end of that, use some sort of whatever it is that you have to use to make them feel appreciated. For instance, you may send them an email or send them a letter or send them a small token of appreciation. Whether it's flowers or whether it's just a regular gift, a pen, a notepad, whatever it is, you always want to make sure that you make your customers feel like they're valued, that their business is valued, that their business is important to you. So don't ever underestimate the value of snail mail. It's very vital. And number 10, this is possibly one of the most important ways to communicate effectively. You want to ask the customers how they prefer to communicate. And I stated before that we are in an age and we are in an era that we've now been inundated with technology. We're so technologically savvy these days. You want to make sure that you ask and find out what type of communication would the customer prefer. Listen, you may decide that you like to email, but your customer may like a text message. You may decide that you like to send mail out, but your customer may appreciate a phone call. So this is one part that you want to make sure that you because just to keep the relationship going and just to make sure that you retain them as a customer, always find out how they prefer rather to communicate. This is very, very vital. It's very, very important. Because you may like I said, you may like to send mail to the house, but they don't like to get junk mail. They don't like to get mail. They don't like to open mail. They prefer an email. They prefer a simple text message, or they prefer a simple phone call. So you always want to make sure that you find out how they prefer to communicate. Now, we're actually going to take a 10-minute break, but before we go, are there any concerns, any questions? Anyone would like to add anything to that? Because when we get back, we're actually going to dive into another segment, and that has to do with attitudes. And with that, we're going to do some role playing, and we're going to see what we've learned thus far, and we're going to bring it to life. So we're going to communicate a lot better. We're going to get up out of our seats, and we're going to actually move around. So, any questions? Okay, no questions. Okay, great. So I'll see you guys in 10. Enjoy your break, and when we come back, we'll get right into it. See you then.